Hi guys, so in this video we are going to talk about five elements. So the five elements according to TCM and the five elements according to Ayurveda are very different. Uh, Both are called five element or PanchaMahaBhuta, but their association with our health, association with our body, association with nature is quite different. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the differences also and also mainly focus on the five element concept of TCM. So let us begin. So first thing, five elements according to TCM are it starts with wood, fire, earth, metal and water. So these are the five elements present in TCM. While in PanchaMahaBhuta, they are quite different. Some of them are same. So the earth is the same, the water is the same, the fire is the same. But other two, the wood and metal, are kind of replaced by energy or chi or vayu and ether. Ether is like space. So this is kind of a little bit confusing because they are kind of talking about the body. They are talking about the same human body and the way to treat it, the way to diagnose it, and yet they are very different. How is that? I will get back to that very quickly, but before that, let me mention you another thing. If you see the geographical location of India and China, Mongolia, and Japan, you will notice that China is kind of closest to Mongolia and Japan compared to India. But somehow, the five element concept that are mostly followed in Japan and Mongolia are actually related to the PanchaMahaBhutas in Ayurveda rather than the five elements in China, which is very interesting, which makes you feel that the Ayurveda, the concepts of Ayurveda actually traveled across China all the way to Mongolia, or the Mughals, they came to India and they have learned Ayurveda here. Even the Japan has connections with India. So that makes you think that, why is that China has a very different concept of five elements while these other nations have similar to India. So in Japan, they have, I have not understood or studied much about Mongolian medicine, but since in Japan they practice something similar to TCM, like traditional medicine, along with their own herbology. So the five element concept in Japanese culture is Chisui Kafuku. You have the water, you have the earth, you have the fire, you have the chi, and you also have the ether or the space. So that is how it is different. So after my studies, I have come to a conclusion that the Ayurvedic or this Japanese way of understanding the five element is that these five elements basically make our body. So our body is made from these five elements, and these five elements together are constituting various aspects of our body, like the skin, the bones, and everything. So when a person dies in Indian culture, when we burn the dead body, the reason for burning or that whole cremation process that is happening, the reason behind it is these five elements that make this body has to go back to the nature. So the first thing is you use fire to burn. Second thing is the body burns and turns into space and energy. So they are dissipating into space and energy. The earth, so the ash that is formed after the burning is kind of going into the ground. So they are returning to the earth, and some amount of ash that is there, it actually is carried and thrown into the holy waters. So the reason, there are many reasons for throwing that ash into the holy water river, is because in Ayurveda, it is believed that asthya or the remains of the bone has to go back to the river. The river will have its nourishment done. So all the nutrients that are present in the ashes basically is the bones. So the bones have this nourishment. The nutrients that are present help in replenishing the river. So that is one of the understanding. If you look at from a TCM perspective, you will understand another thing is that the body, in our body, the bones are represented by water, so they belong to kidney. So the kidney, water and bones are one, they represent one aspect of the nature. So when a person dies, the ashes, it is composed of bones. So the bone which is burned is then let into the water. So the water element of the body, that is kidney or the bones, is let into the water, so it goes back to the nature. So that is some of the concepts of Ayurveda and PanchaMahaBhuta. While in Chinese culture or in Chinese medicine, the five elements are like, our body has this organ systems, this tissues, bones, muscle, everything. These five elements and the organs are kind of in tune with the nature. What I mean by that is that the liver, for example, is connected with the tree. So liver and tree are having this similar kind of. So for example, like if you cut your liver into half, then the liver will grow. It is the fastest growing organ in the body. So it will grow very fast, like a tree. So it is like, the organs are, or the body parts are like these five elements in nature. So the liver is like the tree, the kidney is like the water, lungs is like the metal, heart is like the fire, then there is spleen. We talked about spleen last time. Spleen is like the earth. So these elements are basically how the body's organs function. So they are not considering that the body is made from this element. They are like the nature, these elements in nature are interacting or functioning the same way these organs are interacting inside the body. So they call it shang. Shang is something like it look alike or it is like this. So in Chinese medicine, there are a lot of concepts that are kind of, oh, our body also works like that. So that is why you have to understand when we talk about five elements, you cannot just go and read a book and say, okay, liver is wood, spleen is earth, kidney is water, and then just read it like a dead wood. It's like it is alive. It has these variations that are occurring. So let us go and focus little bit on the five elements. So the five elements, I'm going to simply talk about the five organs or the 12 organs, how they are represented in this five element category, and we talk about in detail later. So first is the wood. The liver, as I just mentioned, liver is representing the wood. This one more misconception about five elements has a translation issue. So when I talk about wood, in Chinese it is called mu. Mu is basically tree and not a dead wood log. So when you talk about wood, you are not actually thinking about wood, but you are thinking about forest as woods. So it is not dead log of wood, but it is the tree. So it is better to call this element as tree than wood, which is commonly referred to internationally because it was kind of mistranslated during the early periods and it stayed like that throughout these years. Second thing is fire. So the fire has heart in it. So the heart in our body is represented by fire, and a cover for the heart, that is pericardium, is also represented by fire. So these two are together. So pericardium has a very different nature. We talk about the organs later, but pericardium in TCM is a kind of considered an organ. It is basically the physical heart. And what we call heart is basically our mind or the energy that runs the heart. After this, we need to move on to the earth. So the earth is basically spleen. We talked about spleen, which is responsible for digestion and transportation of food and water. After spleen, after earth comes metal. Metal is basically lungs. Lungs is like metal. It is a little bit difficult to understand the concept of metal from a Western perspective. Like lungs, metal doesn't make any sense. How is that? We can understand liver, we can understand heart because heart is pumping blood. It is like hot because it is creating heat. So heart is fire. So you understand that. But kidney also, kidney, the next element is related to water. So kidney is basically It is related to water metabolism, so you can represent it with water, that you can understand. Spleen, again, the food comes from the earth, and the earth is related to spleen, so spleen is like that. So you can understand those concepts. But metal is kind of tricky thing to understand unless you know the Chinese culture. Metal is basically has this property of Sholian. Sholian is collection. So if you say keep a metal plate or metal vessel outside in cold, when there is fog or moisture inside, you will notice that it starts collecting water. So it has this ability to collect. The formation of metal itself is when the molecules or these metallic molecules or ions, they come together and kind of bound together and they become strong. So this feel of collecting is what metal is in TCM. So in traditional Chinese medicine, in scriptures also, it is also mentioned that lung is also represented by this clouds or the sky, which is like covering the earth. So that is kind of a in relation concept with the PanchaMahaBhuta also, the energy and the ether, or the chi and the ether, they are kind of constituting the metal or the lungs. So that is kind of a little bit of tricky thing to understand in TCM. But once you understand, get a hang of what metal is, hang about, like, what lungs is, then you can know, like, it's not just like, physical metal that we see, but it's more of the energy of the metal, energy of the wood, energy of the fire, energy of the water, and energy of the earth. That is kind of what we are finding similarities with the internal organs function. So that's it for this video. I'm going to talk in detail about all this concept as we proceed further, because they are very vague concept. They are not very easy to understand. They are like sham, like there is a saying in Chinese medicine, it's like mang ren mo sham. So if you ask four blind people to touch an elephant and tell me what it is and what an elephant is, then everybody has a different opinion. One guy touches the trunk and he says, like, the trunk or the nose of the elephant is the elephant. The other touches the leg and then says the leg is the actual elephant. Another one touches the belly and says the belly is the elephant. Another guy touches the tail and says tail is the elephant. So for a blind, whatever he touches is the truth. But for a one who has the eyesight, when he look at the elephant, he looks at it as a whole. So these concepts are like that. If you go in one and one detail, like how Western science is, you start splitting things, and then you will go more and more away from the actual core of the TCM. So that is why I'm going little by little, and once everything is understood, you will have the whole picture of how TCM diagnostic or how TCM philosophies work. So that's it for today. Do like this video, share it to your friends who are interested in this kind of knowledge, where it involves a concept of nature, how body works, how the concept of traditional Chinese medicine works. And do subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, if you have not understood anything, do write me in the comment and I will get back to you. Thank you so much and have a great day. Your headaches.